Hello students, in the subject International Humanitarian Law, we have taken 3 units up to date, and International Movement for Humanitarian Warfare, under which we have taken various topics, various conventions for peace and Hague Convention, Geneva Convention, Petersburg Declaration. Then we also taken the international efforts for outlaw slavery. And now in the last lecture we have taken United Nations and humanitarian law and the role of various organizations like Economic and Social Cultural Council and International Labour Organization on the preservation and protection of human rights. Now the second part of this third unit is crusade against discrimination in respect of employment and occupation and the racial discrimination. So under this unit we will be studying about various incidents of the discrimination and what are the various actions taken by the various instrumentalities for the preservation of rights against such discrimination based on various facts. So here first of all, we will see what are the number of conventions which have been concluded under the auspices of the United Nations and other international organizations to protect the human rights of vulnerable groups and to prevent the commission of inhuman acts. So that we already have seen, and we also seen that what are the basic functions or powers of the international instrumentalities in protection of the human rights. Now what are the situation in India, how we have taken certain steps through the litigation in the area of employment and to stop and prevent discrimination based on such facts. So first of all, it is indeed commendable that India has become a party to the member of Human Rights Commission and lots of conventions where we also have taken part to preserve the human rights. So let's see what type of convention. So the very first is International Convention on Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination 1965. It was signed on March 2 of 1961 and ratified by our Indian government on December 1968. So India ratified the convention with the preservation with regard to Article 21 of the convention, which relates to the settlement of disputes of International Court of Justice. The preservation states that the government of India declares that reference of any dispute to the International Court of Justice for decision in terms of Article 22 of the International Convention on decision on elimination of all forms of racial discrimination. The consent of the all parties to the dispute is necessary with each individual case. So the basic aim and objective of ratifying this convention was to preserve the rights of the persons who are violated because of any form of discrimination and to eliminate such lacunas. The second convention that India has become the party of such convention is International Convention on the Suppression and Punishment of the Crime of Apartheid 1973, and it was ratified by the India on September 22 of 1977. The International Covenant Against Apartheid in sports in 1985, that was also being ratified on September 12 of the 1990. So these are the conventions which are against any type of discrimination. Convention on the Prevention and Punishment of the Crimes of Genocide. Genocide is also one very inhuman act, and the India has become the party of such convention where it will take into the prevention and protection of such incidents under the Act. Convention on the Rights of Child 1989, that was ratified on a declaration which stated that while fully subscribing to the objectives and purposes of convention, realizing that certain rights of child, namely those pertaining to the economic, social and cultural rights, can be progressively implemented in within the framework of international cooperation. So these are the conventions where India has taken to eliminate any forms of discrimination or racial discrimination. Convention on Elimination of All Forms of Discriminations Against Women, 1979. This was ratified on July 9, 1993. India, while ratifying the convention, made two declarations and a reservation also. The first declaration reads, with regard to the Article 5A and Article 16(1) of the Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women, the Government of Republic of India declares that it shall abide by and ensure these provisions in conformity with its policy of non-interference in the personal affairs of any declaration, any community, without its initiative and consent. The second declaration stated that with regard to the Article 16 Clause 2, the Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discriminations Against Women, the principle is the Government of the Republic of India declares that though in principle it fully supports the principle of compulsory registration of marriages, it fully supports the principle of compulsory registration of variety of marriages. It is not practical in a vast country like India with its variety of customs, regions, religions, level of literacy. However, the declaration has become meaningless in view of the judgment of the Supreme Court in Seema versus Ashwini Kumar. Later, the Supreme Court on October 28, 2007 held that the compulsory registration of marriage in respect of all persons who are citizens of India, even if they belong to various religions. In addition to the above, it also declares that India has a reservation by stating that it does not consider itself bound by paragraph 1 of Article 29 of the Convention, which relates to the settlement of disputes through the upper arbitrations. The Convention on Political Rights of Women was ratified in 1952. Convention of the Political Rights of Women 1952, and it was ratified on November 2, 1961. Protocol of 1953 amending the International Slave Convention 1926 was ratified on March 12, 1954, and the Supplementary Convention on the Abolition of Slavery, slave trade and institutions and practices similar to slaves, that was also ratified on June 23rd of 1960. Then Convention for Suppression of the Traffic in Person and of the Exploitation of the Prohibition of Others 1949, that was also ratified on January 9, 1953. So these are the various conventions where India has taken crucial inhuman where the things are against the protection and preservation of the human rights. Then again, India has always taken a concrete position for the protesting the discrimination in respect of employment or discrimination or racial discrimination for the occupations. So in addition to these, there are convention against torture and other cruel, inhuman or degrading treatment or punishment, that was also signed by India on October 1997. Then optional protocol on the involvement of children in armed conflicts 2000. Optional protocol on the sale of children, child prostitution and child pornography 2000. They were also signed by India. India is neither a party to the convention related to the status of refugees in 1951 and its protocol of 1967, nor enacted any legislation for the protection of the refugees, but however it has provided refugee to thousands of persons of other states, particularly from Tibet, Bangladesh, Afghanistan and Sri Lanka. In the absence of not being a party to the Refugee Convention, the legal status of such persons is not clear, but now the government is going to think about on it. So this way there are certain conventions where India has become the party, or it has ratified certain conventions for the preservation of human rights against any type of discrimination or racial discrimination or employment discrimination. So now we will take some case regarding this. Okay, now we will see about the racial discrimination. What is the effect of various conventions on racial discrimination and how the practice has been abolished. The Racial Discrimination Universal Declaration of Human Rights under Article 2 has laid down that the rights and freedoms provided in declaration shall be available to all the persons irrespective of race, color, sex and religion. In 1963, the Assembly of the proclaimed the declaration of elimination of all forms of racial discrimination. The declaration affirmed the fundamental equality of all persons and confirmed that discrimination between human beings and on the grounds of race, color or ethnic origin is a violation of the human rights, and its grounds it is an obstacle to the friendly and peaceful relations among the nations and people. So in this way it is the General Assembly on December 21 of 1965 also declared the International Convention on Elimination of all forms of racial discrimination. This convention came into force on January 4th of 1969. So this way there were 173 states parties to this convention. India has also recognized the racial discrimination violative of human rights. What is the definition of racial discrimination? So the convention under Article 1 defines that the terms of racial discrimination by stating that any distinction, exclusion, restriction or preference based on race, color, descent or national or ethnic origin which has the purpose or effect of nullifying or impairing the recognition, enjoyment or exercise on an equal footing of human rights and fundamental freedom in the political, economical, social, cultural or any other field of the public life. The convention shall not apply in distinction, exclusion, restrictions or preferences made by the state party between citizens and non-citizens. So this is what the grounds where any such special discrimination is restricted by this convention. So obligation on the state parties, they are the state parties should undertake not to engage in any such act or practice or racial discrimination against any persons, group of persons, institutions or public authorities. State parties shall not sponsor, defend or support any type of racial discrimination by any person or organizations. Each state party shall take effective measures to review the government, national or local policies and to amend or rescind such perpetuating racial discrimination wherever it exists. So this is what the obligations that have been put on the state parties who are the part of such convention of the which is for elimination of any form of racial discrimination. Now, the interstate complaint system is also available under the convention, and there are reporting systems. Then the World Conference on Racism in 2001 was also composed. The United Nations Conference Against Racism, Racial Discrimination, Xenophobia and Related Intolerance, that was held on August 31 to September 7 in 2001 in Durban, that is South Africa, which called for the action by international community to eradicate them whenever they may found. So any type of racial discrimination should be totally avoided by the all state parties, and from those who are also not the part of such declaration. The declaration expressed concern about the plight of the Palestinians people under foreign occupation. That Palestinians' point was very much in the arguments when there was certain crisis against it. Then the various steps have been taken to find out racial discrimination and to eliminate them from any form. So India is also the party to such convention, and it has undertaken in its constitutional rights that discrimination against women shall not be tolerated. Again, the education, employment, healthcare, economic and social life, then equality before law, marriage and family relations, then all these things is for elimination of discrimination against women or vulnerable classes and everyone. So India is always has taken a view of equality before the law and equal protection of the law, and it has made the efforts for the betterment of the women, children and vulnerable classes. And there are many religions and many castes in Indian culture, in Indian territory, but still it has always taken part to eliminate all forms of racial discrimination or sexual discrimination based on customs and traditions. So this way, the optional protocol to the Convention of the Right of Child, then conventions to the empowerment of the women and other vulnerable classes, that has also been taken by the India in its constitutional amendments and its preservation of the goals of preamble. Then optional protocol on the sale of children, child prostitution and child pornography, that was also for the preservation of most vulnerable class, that is children, and trafficking in human. Then certain other provisions have been made for the migrant workers, then for their education and for the employment of the workers in various forms. So this is what the things that related to the crusade against discrimination in respect of employment and occupations, and what various steps that have been taken by the Indian government, and at international level various conventions on elimination of any form of racial discrimination. Then in this unit we have also seen what is the role of Economic and Social Council in the preservation of human rights and protection of human. So students, in the unit 3 of International Humanitarian Law, we have seen what is the role of Economic and Social Council in the preservation of human rights, what is the role and responsibilities and functioning of the International Labour Organization, and what are various conventions for the discrimination against employment and racial discrimination. So all you kindly study from the books, and you can also have reference from the different research papers and material available on the internet. Now in the subject International Humanitarian Law, we have completed 3 units.